Hi, I'm Vanessa Rosenblum. I'm the president of Pro REA Staffing, and on this channel, we focus on fostering careers in real estate and growing real estate teams. This is a continuation of a series of videos I'm doing on decoding the job titles used on real estate teams. Last week, I talked about listing coordinators and listing managers, and this week, we're talking about transaction coordinators and transaction managers. If you haven't seen the video on listing coordinators or my video on licensed versus unlicensed real estate assistants, I will include the links below and tag them up here so that you can watch those as well. Now, before we dig in, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the bell so that you're notified when we post new videos. Let's get into it. So a quick caveat before we dig into a day in the life of a transaction coordinator. Every team does things a little bit differently, and your specific job duties are going to vary depending on where you are in the country and the size of your team and the preferences of your agent. So today I'm going to give you an overview of what you could expect if you're searching for a job titled transaction coordinator, or later in this video, we'll talk about transaction managers. So at its core, a transaction coordinator is responsible for assisting a real estate agent with the administrative duties that occur during the contract to close process. They're the ones who are responsible for the paperwork, compliance, and communication between all parties so that the deal runs smoothly. Now, different states have different laws regarding this contract to close process. Some states are called escrow states, meaning they use an escrow company to handle this due diligence process. Some states use attorneys, and so the role of a transaction coordinator will be different in both states. I can tell you that escrow states require a lot more work on the part of a transaction coordinator, so these roles are much more common in escrow states versus lawyer states. And I'm going to include a link in the description below that will give you a reference so that you can see what the rules are in your specific state. There are a lot of moving parts during a real estate transaction, and the stakes are high. So being a transaction coordinator means being at the center and being responsible for communication, compliance, and deadlines. Okay, so I have some notes in front of me so that I don't miss anything, but let's go through what a transaction coordinator does during the contract to close process. So if you're in a escrow state, the first thing a TC will do is open escrow. They'll contact the escrow department or the escrow company and start the process with them. They'll also coordinate title. They'll also stay on top of the mortgage loan approval process and the appraisal process. They will also coordinate inspections. They might assist in negotiating requests for repairs if those come up, and they'll help to coordinate the completion of repairs if they're supporting the seller. They'll also be responsible for communicating updates between all parties. Again, the flow of communication is central to this job. They'll monitor the contingency periods to make sure that no deadlines are met, and they may help to coordinate moving or possession schedules. They'll definitely submit necessary documentation to their broker so that the agent can get paid at the end of the deal. That's essential. And they may order up rider signs, so it says pending on the sign, and when the transaction closes, they'll order down the signs. They may order the closing gift. They'll take the listing off of the website, the broker's website. They'll update the client's information in their CRM database and schedule follow-up check-ins for either the agent or someone else on the team to do to make sure that if they're representing the buyer, that the buyer's happy and settled into their new home. So this is a highly process-oriented job. This is a job for someone who loves paperwork and details and can handle multiple projects at the same time. And even though it's the same process, essentially, every single time, every transaction is different, every client is different. And so while there are repetitive tasks in this job, there's still a lot of variety. It can be a highly stressful job, so it's a good job for someone who can remain calm under pressure. There are basically three types of transaction coordinators. Your first is the independent transaction coordinator who works on a per file basis, and they work for multiple clients. The next type of transaction coordinator works in a real estate office and supports all of the agents in that office. And then finally, some TCs are hired directly onto a real estate team and they only work with one agent. When a transaction coordinator works on a real estate team, they have a broader scope of responsibilities. They will have much more communication with the client. They may run errands and go out to the property, and they will be much more involved in the customer service aspect of managing that transaction than, say, a contract TC or an office TC. Really, the office TC is just there to ensure compliance with the file. The level of experience required for this role varies greatly, but generally you need to have about 2 years of solid administrative experience. You need to have great attention to detail, fantastic organizational skills, and good customer service skills. Beyond that, some teams require that you have a license or that you have many more years of experience handling complex transactions. It's also important that you're used to working in a very fast-paced, deadline-driven environment, because that's what it's like working as a TC. Okay, transaction managers. Transaction managers are more experienced transaction coordinators. They are licensed. They only work for a real estate team. This is not a role that you would find in a real estate office under most circumstances, or as an independent per file role. This person really acts as the agent during the transaction, and they're really taking ownership of the process. So they are most likely very involved in negotiating requests for repairs, discussing the status of the transaction with their client. They'll be reviewing the inspection reports and looking for red flags and discussing how to move forward with their client. So they're actively involved in managing the transaction so that the lead agent doesn't have to get involved. And also on some teams, depending on how they're set up, the transaction manager may be involved in drafting counteroffers and handling contract-related issues before the transaction goes under contract. Really depends on the skill set of the transaction manager and the setup of the team. Transaction managers, as I said, are licensed, and they generally have at least 5 years of relevant experience. Oftentimes they've been agents and they decide that they'd rather have the stability of a job on a team versus working on commission. We've placed attorneys as transaction managers on large commercial teams before. People with paralegal backgrounds also tend to be a good fit for this role once they're licensed and they have some experience. Okay, there you have it. There's the difference between a transaction manager and a transaction coordinator. If I missed anything, make sure to leave a comment below. We'd love to hear more about what you do on your role on a real estate team. And don't forget to hit like if you liked this video and subscribe so that you're the first to know when we post new videos. I'll see you on the next one.